This computer. Okay, so can everybody see this? Do they see a green screen that says Creation Care? Give me some nods. Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to be discussing the Creation Care Ministry, about what we've been doing at St. Albans, and more specifically talking about choosing a new refrigerator for St. Albans, a chilling tale of energy efficiency. But first, I'd like to start us off in prayer. Lord God, thank you for bringing us together today to learn about St. Albans Creation Care Ministry. Keep our minds open, our hearts open to learning new things today and moving forward with your mission for us and helping God, your creation. God, please lift up the world at this time of need, protect everyone, and let us move forward together. Thank you again for St. Albans, the home you've given us. In the Lord's name we pray. Amen. So first, I wanted to highlight this screen here. The Episcopal Church has recently done a lot in the Creation Care Ministry. If you had gone to the Episcopal, the National Church's website just a year ago, none of this would have been there. This all is brand new. There's a lot of really cool resources on this. You can see the link there at the bottom of your screen. Check it out. There's just enormous amount of stuff, and it's a great resource for us. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about the new refrigerator that we purchased recently for St. Albans. We haven't really had a chance to use it much, given that we haven't been able to worship together in St. Albans. That doesn't mean that it's not there. It's not saving us energy day in and day out. I wanted to first talk a little bit about St. Albans Creation Care Ministry, how it was formed. It was approved by the vestry in late 2018, and it was a result of two things. One is that we had done an outreach survey of the congregation, asking people in the St. Albans congregation, what's most important for you in our outreach ministries? And Creation Care or environmental concerns came at the top of that list. So that really kind of spoke to us. And then also right around that time, we had installed a solar system. So it was approved by the vestry, like I mentioned, and I stepped up to be first chair of the Creation Care Ministry. We first met in February of 2019. And then we kind of hit the ground running. We wanted to see what we could do. One of the first things we did was sign the Genesis Covenant, which is a commitment by St. Albans to reduce our carbon footprint by 50% over the next 10 years. So we got that right out of the gate, and so now we're trying to meet that goal and work towards it. We meet the second Tuesday of the month. We had been meeting in Classroom 3, but we're doing Zoom meetings, so everyone's welcome to join us. A little bit more about the Genesis Covenant. It was actually adopted by the Episcopal Church at the 76th General Convention way back in 2009. There was the Right Reverend Stephen Charleston. He was a bishop, and he was the one that actually had initiated or first talked about this in June 2007, an interfaith conference on the environment in Seattle, Washington. So this is where it got started. And it's been around for a little bit, and we did adopt it, and we're working towards that. This is a little bit more information that was on the Creation Care Episcopal, the National Church's website. It's just, like I said, it's got a lot of great resources, and I think it's something that we're going to use as a tool to help us keep moving our Creation Care ministry forward. So let's talk about the fridge. As simple as you might think, actually choosing a refrigerator freezer that both meets the church's needs and is the most energy efficient in its class was actually kind of challenging. Do we need a big fridge? Do we need a small fridge? Do we need a freezer on top or a freezer on bottom? These were all questions that came up, and we kind of worked through them, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You know, a lot of people, when you buy a new fridge, have a lot of um, assumptions that come along with it. And one actually is that most people think that the bottom freezer, top refrigerator is somehow the most efficient. Just rule number one. And it's not true, actually. When you actually go into the Energy Star data, which is the government's, federal government's Energy Star records, you can see that it's not always the case. It was shown, though, that certain side-by-side models and even counter depth models are less efficient overall when compared to other model types. But that has a little bit to do with the less insulation and the design. So when we knew that whether having the freezer on top or the bottom didn't matter, we were kind of free to pick what configuration works best for the needs of our parish. And we looked around, we tried to talk to some people and figure out what would work. And we ultimately decided that fridge on top, freezer on bottom is the most convenient and is the a way to utilize the fridge, which we use a lot more than the freezer. So that's the one we ultimately decided about on. You know, when we started to look more at it, that if you actually chose the top freezer, bottom refrigerator, those are kind of more like the entry-level apartment fridges that only go about 21 cubic feet. And you can go much bigger when you start to expand on the different configurations with the top refrigerator, bottom freezer. Most of us, including myself, my freezer's on top, the fridge is on bottom, right? This one is the opposite. And when you go to that style, all of a sudden you get much larger, sized units, volume. So we actually measured the physical space where the St. Albans existing fridge was. We realized that we're not constrained on any space requirements. We don't need to get a counter depth fridge. We don't need to get a narrow fridge. We were free to pick whichever one we want. And so we started thinking about, well, most of the time our fridge sits empty. There's no one's really ever using it during the week. Maybe there's some coffee creamer in there. But when it comes time for a big gathering and we're doing a big lunch or a potluck, you know, you can pack this thing full. And when we did some of the surveys, some people brought up the casserole capacity, or how many casseroles can you pack into this thing. And that was an important aspect of ultimately deciding to get a slightly larger volume than the smallest offerings, but not quite as big as the biggest one we could have got. Again, a lot of people said that it's just easier to have the fridge on top, freezer on the bottom. So once we kind of figured out our size, what model, whether the configuration we want, we got to pick, well, who are we going to buy it from? We looked first at Paletsky's in Eureka. We looked at Costco and even Home Depot up in Crescent City. Ultimately, we decided on Costco. Both Costco and Paletsky's offered free shipping and setup and haul away. Home Depot wanted $150, but we were able to get around that, you know, have some people drive up to Crescent City if need be. Like I said, ultimately we decided on Costco, and they didn't actually take away the old fridge. We ended up donating the old fridge, which was still good, which was still energy efficient, to Arcata House, if I believe that's correct. And so we actually took it over and delivered it for them. But Costco did come in, set up the new one, take away all the packaging materials, so it worked out great. I think Rick Timmons was there to help out, meet that. I know Deacon Cindy was there to help. I think Connie helped clean out the old fridge. So there was a lot of people that helped make this happen with the logistics. So here we go. This, you can see number 10 was the one we bought. In this list here, you can see, look over on the right-hand side, that this is the amount of energy it uses per volume. So the fridge we bought uses 26.5 kilowatt hours for every cubic foot. And you can see that kind of fall. So what we're trying to get, the lower the number, the better, right? The least amount of energy to keep 1 cubic foot cool is what we're aiming at. And so there are some 18s or 19s. These were the kind of tiny top freezers, bottom fridges. And then we looked at some of the other ones here, and ultimately we decided on this guy here. It uses about 26 kilowatt hours per cubic foot. And it's confusing because if you go into Home Depot or Paletzky's, they have these little yellow tags hanging in the fridges, and they say how many kilowatt hours per year this fridge uses. Sure, simple enough, right? But what they're not telling you is they're not breaking it down. Of course, a big unit is going to use more energy than a small unit, but if the big unit per volume, actually the energy required per volume, if you divided the volume of the fridge out, it actually might come out to be less. So you have to do some math. You have to look at the numbers and think about a little more deeply than just reading the little yellow tag. And there is some, this fridge uses this much power, and they give a little chart at the bottom, and we'll see that here in a second. You can see that our old fridge actually wasn't that not efficient. I mean, it wasn't that bad, right? What did it say? It's 27. That's what our old fridge was. We're at 26.5. That's not to say that the old unit didn't start to use more power over time. It's not that the compressor can go bad, but maybe the coils got dirty. It was time for us to get a new fridge. But to say that the old fridge wasn't something that still was chugging along, was doing great, isn't right. And it was still a good unit. That's why we donated it to Arcata House. They really needed it. They appreciated it. But what we were able to do is move into something that better fits the needs. We know it's going to be with us for a long time, and it was a nice upgrade for us. Over here in the left, you can see I'm talking about a Sunfrost. So turns out that before I worked for Skirfield Solar, which is a residential solar installing company, for about 10 years, I worked for a company called Sunfrost, and we made ultra efficient refrigerators for people that primarily lived off grid. When you live off grid, you have to generate all your power yourself using solar or micro hydro or maybe even wind. So it's really important that you have your loads as low as possible, and that's where Sunfrost came in. And you can see this fridge, it uses 12.5 cubic kilowatt hours per cubic foot per year to keep cool. So that's less than the 18 here. And this is a fridge that's been around for a long time, and it wasn't only because of government mandates did Samsung, Whirlpool, and GE even start to make their fridges more efficient through the Energy Star program. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we bought. This is it right here. 33-inch wide bottom freezer. This is the freezer. This is the fridge on top. This is the price we paid with delivery. It's got glass shelves. It's got LED lights in there. It actually does have an ice maker in the freezer, but it doesn't have through the door ice, which is important, right? Because if you have through the door ice, then you have a hole in the door, and you have to have these mechanisms and motors. Well, we have ice. There's an ice bucket under there, but there's no through the door ice, which is something we didn't really need. And it's nice to still have the ability to have ice, but we don't need the through the door ice. This talks about Deacon Cindy. She took delivery on March 12th. We bought it from Costco. It included the delivery, setup, and takeaway. We actually got it for sale. I think this price said $1,200. We actually got it for $1,100. We talked about Connie and Deacon Cindy cleaning the fridge, and Rick took it over to Arcata House. There it is. That's what it looks like. I don't know how many people have been up to the church to actually see it because of the lockdown, but sitting there looking great. You can see the LED lights up the top, and there also is another little fridge thermometer there. All these shelves are adjustable, which is really cool, and we can pull these out to get as many casseroles as we want in there. There's the freezer. This is the ice bucket, and currently there is no water line running to the fridge. So there is the ability to connect that ice maker, but there's no water. So we'll just have to get under the church and plumb a little water line over there, cold water line, no biggie. And then at some point in the future, we'll have some ice, an automatic ice maker in there. It pulls out. This thing's on rollers. It's really convenient.
You can slip it.
It also has digital thermostat controls, and it's separate. You can have one for the freezer and one for the fridge. A lot of units have one for both, so that's a nice feature. Here's the model number. We talked a little bit about this. And in the bottom left-hand corner, you see there is the energy guide, that little yellow tag I was talking about. And again, you kind of have to do some math to really pull apart those numbers and really see what you're looking at. I know a lot of people haven't been up there. Was there any feedback, or did anybody have any comments on the fridge?
I think it was nice, Daniel, that we stayed with what we had in terms of the way it was laid out, because then people didn't have to adjust, and having that bottom freezer is really nice for folks.
Yeah, thank you, Deacon Cindy. And yeah, that's a good point. So actually the one we had before was a top fridge, bottom freezer, but the one we had before, the freezer was actually hinged and it opened in such a way that it swung open, whereas this is now a pull or a drawer freezer. So that, yeah, thank you. I'm glad it's kind of autopilot too. So thank you for that feedback. So going back, I came to Humboldt to go to the university in 2005. I graduated with environmental engineering. I immediately went to work for Sunfrost. Sunfrost not only made refrigerators for people that lived off-grid, also on-grid, but we also made a vaccine refrigerator that kept medicine cold, and we'd send them over to developing countries. So one of the things that made Sunfrost so efficient is that we didn't use automatic defrost cycles. So that means ice would build up in your fridge, and occasionally you'd have to defrost it and chip away the ice, essentially. Our fridges had much thicker insulation, anywhere from 4 to 6 inches rather than the 1 to 2 inches you might see in a typical fridge. We put the compressors and the condensers on the top of the unit, so the heat went upwards, not on the bottom. We embedded the evaporator coils in the back wall of the fridge rather than blowing air across the evaporator like it would be in the one we just bought. So a lot of these things resulted in the fridges being ultra efficient. We also made them operate on DC compressors. So imagine you live up in the hills of Humboldt, you're off the grid, you have solar panels, you have batteries, you can hook the fridge right to your batteries And rest assured, it's not going to drain them. You're not going to run out of power because it's using very little. You could run it through an inverter and power it by AC as well. In addition to the fridges, we also made composting toilets, home scrap eaters for kitchen scraps, heliodons, which is a tool to show how the sun passes through the sky. So we're no longer producing new fridges. Larry Schuessler, who's kind of my mentor and who I learned a lot from, continues to do consulting. In fact, I still work with him to provide parts. We got a lot of fridges all over the country, all over the world. People still need parts, door seals or latches or stuff like that. What happened is essentially the company stopped making money. People could go buy a fridge from Sears and a couple extra solar panels and make it work. It was because of solar panels becoming so cheap that you could go buy a less efficient fridge and just buy an extra 2 or 3 solar panels and still save money from having to buy a Sunfrost. So there were a lot of people out there that still wanted a Sunfrost, not because of, they could save money. They wanted a quality product made locally in Arcata, but we weren't making money. So it was time. We closed about 4 or 5 years ago. And since then I've been over doing residential solar, which is, as it kind of goes, it went from the off-grid to the residential side. It was around for a while. This kid in this picture right here is my age, actually. That guy in the little red sweater. This is Larry Schuessler's house. He lives over there on Anderson and Bayside. That's one of our fridges right there. You can see it's on this little cabinet. This was an under counter fridge, stainless steel. So we did a lot of custom installs. A lot of people wanted under counter or in their RV or stuff like that. So we did a lot of custom ones. It was a really cool experience, and I learned a lot working at Sunfrost. We sent these fridges all around the world. We would put together the refrigerator that also had an ice pack freezer, so you could freeze ice packs and then take the vaccines, put it into a vaccine carrier, which is essentially a cooler, and then go and do even more remote outreach than where the fridge is located. So it was a great to put together. We would put together the panels, the batteries, the racking, the whole thing. We'd ship them over in containers, all South America, Africa, all around the world. Here's Nigeria, Colombia, Peru, Nepal, Kiribati, Congo. So these were all the vaccine refrigerators, and it was about half and half. We did half domestics, half of the vaccine fridges was our production line. This was one of our scrap eaters. It's a home composter, essentially a wine barrel. And if anybody wants tips on making one of these yourself, let me know and I'll give you some ideas. Composting toilet. This was from the Arcata Ed Farm. I think a lot of you probably know where the Arcata Educational Farm is. It was right there on Old Arcata Road. They had one of there. You can read what it says there. They had a composting toilet. There's a composting toilet up at CCAT, which is the Campus Center for Appropriate Technology at Humboldt State. And there's a lot of these out there. It's a batch system. So essentially you go in the barrel and you add dry material, and then you stir it. And once the first barrel fills, you cap it, set it aside, and let it sit for 4 to 6 months while it does its thing. While it's sitting, you use the second barrel, and so it's a batch. So you go back and forth between the two. There's a little water pump to recirculate any liquids to the top.
You have to make sure you use a lot of dry material.
Here's an example up top of what it should look like. Composting toilet. This is what a conventional sewer system might look like. A lot more going on here. Small is simple. It's just, there's so much going into these systems. energy chemicals. So by making it simple, we're reducing that carbon footprint. So let's come back around. So we talked a little bit about how St. Albans adopted the Genesis Covenant. We want to reduce the carbon footprint of our church by 50% over 10 years. Great. How do you measure that? How do you track that? One way is to use Energy Star's Portfolio Manager. We can have our PG&E bills, gas and electric, automatically push to this portal. We can have our water bills, our, our, our garbage bills push to this portal, and this will measure, this has metrics in there that will measure our carbon footprint. So we have a baseline, we know where we're at, where we've been, and where we're going. It's a really cool, it's really complicated to set up, and it's surprisingly pretty in-depth, but it's something that we're using currently to keep track of where we're at. Getting that solar panels on really helped us, and we're just going to keep dialing this down and dialing it in. And even if we do get to 50%, you know what, we're going to keep going. And this portfolio manager is going to let us know where we're at. We can look at some data right here. What are we looking at? We're looking at our electric bill. This is a little bit old. It's from May of 2019 to May 2020, okay? This is our amount of electricity in dollars, right? Here's $160. This is $160 in credit. In the summer, our solar system is producing more power than we need. Each one of these little darker orange is us backfeeding the grid during peak load times where we receive the most credit. The lighter the color, you can see over here, is when we're consuming electricity on non-peak times. So we actually produce almost all of our electricity during peak hours. We consume almost all of our power during non-peak hours, which makes sense, right? We're meeting Sunday mornings. Maybe the church office is open during the week. So we're rocking it. We have more power than we know what to do with, which kind of brings us into the next topic.
How do we get ourselves off natural gas? This is our power bill. This is our gas bill here.
We use $320. Our gas bill is $320 in January. That's a lot. If we, this line isn't exactly right. We're using $200 in December. So if we can use the electricity from our solar to heat our space rather than using natural gas to heat our space, we can get rid of this $300 a month gas bill. If we can also heat our domestic hot water with electric, and if maybe we can cook our food with electric, we get that gas bill out of there. Not only do we save money, but we're getting rid of our carbon footprint. So we got a big, like I said, we got a rocking solar system up there. There's 24 310 watt solar panels. There's Ralph there showing it off. You can't really see it. No one sees it. It's hard to see from the road. Maybe if our church was oriented the other way, everybody driving in the parking lot would see it every morning. But as it stands, it's on the backside. You don't see it. You don't think about it. But it's up there every day. So when we did solar, we tried to look to reduce our loads as it was. We found some money at Redwood Coast Energy Authority to give us essentially 60% off of a LED retrofit for our library, for our kitchen, and for some lights in the hallway. Really, the library was the big one. Every light in that library now is a brand new digital ballast with a brand new TLED light. It looks great in there. Another thing we tried to do to get energy costs down was to seal the air ducts. And you can see here, the supply registers, right? The warm air, or if we had air conditioning, cold air would be blowing up through this duct. And what happens is a lot of times the seal between the floor and the duct isn't sealed. It isn't good. And so what can happen is when you have air coming up through the vent, it can push back down into the basement, or it can even draft air up from the basement. Of energy, it results in bad indoor air quality. So by sealing this up, we're saving energy and we're breathing healthier air. We also put the vacuum down a lot of these. You couldn't believe how much stuff is down in these vents. And so doing a duct cleaning is going to be on our agenda. We just cleaned the supply register kind of boots. So some of these future projects that you see on your screen may not happen in our current times. Some of them can, right? We're still trying to do the hike. We're still trying to do bike rides. If we can be responsible and social distance, let's do it. Let's get out into nature. Let's see this God's creation. We were talking about zero-scape for the church. Essentially, that means you don't need to water. You use native plants, or you don't need to fertilize, perhaps, right? That could also be zero-scape. So that's an idea. We also want to kind of continue to be able to measure our progress, right? So we talked about the Energy Star portfolio manager. That's kind of given us a long-term track record of what we're doing. But let's get a more interactive or more dynamic monitor for the church. And this would be a consumption production monitoring of our electric. Essentially, on our little Creation Care bulletin board, there'd be a little screen, and it would look like a speedometer for your car. We know exactly how much power we're using, how much power we're producing. If people see that and you're looking at that, you're more likely to go flip off some lights or turn down the heat, because you know you're seeing what's happening, rather than just it's out on the power meter, or we get a bill every month and I don't really know what it is, so I don't care. But if you know you're seeing it, it's like you're driving a hybrid car. All those hybrid cars have those little mile per gallon monitors, and it's causing people to drive slower. So it's important. It's an important tool. We talked about cleaning the heater ducts. We want to do a better job. We want to get under the church. We want to get the foil tape out, the mastic, and we want to really go and do a thorough job under the church, get in our crawl suits. What we did before was important and helped, but there's still more to do there. Talking about the kitchen stove, perhaps we can move away from our natural gas to an electric stove. We're not too worried about that right now. No one's cooking up at the church, but it's still on our radar. Plastic waste. Betsy, one of the people on our committee, is really taking the lead on that and has great suggestions on reducing our plastic waste. Bob Webb and Deacon Cindy, I think, have or will be talking about green funerals. So that there's more stuff. LED lighting, there's more to do. We can start to work on the sanctuary, converting a lot of the little screw-in bulbs to LEDs. The ones we tackled before are the big T5s or the T8s. Another future project I'm thinking about is energy independence. Those blackouts last year really rocked the county, and there has been talk about Humboldt being able to island itself, and maybe we're not going to see those power PSPS, the public safety power shutoffs. Again, we might have an earthquake, we might have a fire, we might have a big storm, there's lots of other things that can cause our power to go out, and it's Humboldt County, and we kind of have to be have more resilience. So I'd like the church to be able to have energy independence from the grid, whether that is a generator or whether that's a Tesla Powerwall that's charged by our solar. That's an idea. Those are conversations. There's other projects to get rid of our natural gas water heater. Maybe we get a heat pump water heater. Heat pump moves heat from one place to the other. It'd be an air to water source heat pump. And we could use all that extra electricity we got on our roof. Heat pump furnace is another idea, and we already talked about the kitchen stove. This is a picture of the night before that power shut off. It was October 26th of last year. This is the day we were actually cleaning the ducts out, and we hit it the next day. That's an idea of what a generator might look like for the church, right? $1,000. The important thing is that this is a propane generator, so we can run it to a propane tank, not a gasoline. And that way, when we wheel the generator away and don't touch it for a year because we haven't had a power outage, the gasoline hasn't clogged up the carburetors and it won't start. By using the propane and propane only, it burns cleaner. The fuel storage is much safer, and we never have to worry about gumming up the carburetor and having it work every time when we need it. And there's ways to back this up. We could just spaghetti string extension cords into the church, or we could go something more fancy where we could backfeed some circuits in the church. We could put a transfer switch in, so it's more more safer because you're not having extension cords all over the place, and really kind of more infrastructure kind of setup. We don't need a big Generac generator. We don't need a big concrete pad poured. We need something though. A Tesla Powerwall, that would be another idea. These are expensive. This is $1,000. This is $10,000. So it's not, and you're getting a lot more for it. You're getting load shedding. You're getting more than just backup. So it's an idea. This is a system that we did. I'm going to kind of cruise through. We're running a little bit behind on time. We talked about getting a heat pump furnace. That we have 4 furnaces in the church. And if we can convert some of those furnaces to heat pump furnace, we're getting rid of those $300, $400 a month gas bills. And even if we do that, say we put in all 4 furnaces with electric heat pumps, our solar might not be able to keep up, but turns out there's plenty of room up on that roof for more solar. We could have electric car charging stations out in the parking lot powered by our solar. These are the 4 furnaces. There's 2 furnaces in the sexton's closet, which is right adjacent a bathroom. One furnace heats the sanctuary in that room. The other furnace in that sanctuary heats the kitchen and the parish hall. There is another furnace down in, I think, classroom 2 or 3 that heats all the classrooms and the chapel. And there's actually another furnace in that utility closet in the hallway by the chapel that actually heats the library, nursery, and the office. So which one do you think's chugging along the most? Probably number 4 here, right? Because the office is open during the day. Which one is asked to work the hardest on Sunday morning? Number 1 and number 2. So we're going to look at the age of each of these furnaces. We're going to look at the efficiency of each of these furnaces, the runtime, the duty cycle, and we're going to think about, well, which one do we want to tackle first? Maybe we get rid of the furnace number 4 altogether, and we put in mini split heat pumps, which have indoor units and an outdoor unit. And we approach it differently, ductless heat pumps. So there's lots of energy and lots of thought that's going to go into getting our church heated using electricity and not natural gas. This is an example. Here's the outdoor unit. This is a furnace, right? This is what our furnace looks like right now. Cold air comes in, it goes to these little circles, which are essentially burners. Natural gas is being burnt right there, and then it flows up hot. Difference is we're going to put in this coil here. And this coil can, if it needs to be cold, it can be cold. If it needs to heat the air, it can heat the air. Imagine that, having air conditioning during the middle of summer in that sanctuary. It'll be the nicest thing. So if for whatever reason the heat pump can't keep up, the gas will come on as a backup and keep it heated. This is the refrigeration cycle. It's moving heat from one place to the other. I won't go through this too much. Again, there's a furnace inside. This is already there. There's already a fan that blows air. There's already burners that burn air. What we want to do is we're going to slide in series with the air this coil, essentially, that gets either hot or warm. And then there'll be an outdoor unit that will be running refrigeration lines between the two. That's what they look like. It looks like an air conditioner. Most people would think it's an air conditioner, but it's a heat pump. It's a two-way. It's reversible. That's what that coil looks like, essentially. This is talking about that mini split heat pump. Does this look familiar, Betsy? There's we did a system in Betsy's house. That's why I said that. Just like this, Daikin. This is a floor unit. This is a wall unit. That's what Betsy got, was one floor unit and two wall units. There are, in fact, if you don't like these hanging on the wall, you can conceal ducts. Betsy has a flat roof, so we couldn't do that, but there are different ductless options to give it that look. And that's what it would look like on the outside over here. This is what it would look like on the inside. And it'll blow either cold or warm air, or you can even put it in a dehumidifier mode and it'll act like a dehumidifier. I do want to leave some room for some questions here, so I'm going to kind of keep going. So this is an air-to-air heat pump, right? It's using air from outside to change phase in this refrigerant, and then it's using phase change on the inside to either cool or heat air, right? An air-to-air heat pump. A heat pump water heater is an air-to-water heat pump. So it's using air, it's taking the heat out of the air and moving it into the water. So an air-to-water heat pump, and you can see there's a top part and then there's coils that coil inside the water heater to heat the water. And there are some electric elements in there that act as backup in case the heat pump can't keep up. This is what it would look like. It's water heater on bottom, typical electric water heater on bottom, the compressors on top. And you do need to make sure these are installed in a room that has enough air movement in it. Otherwise, it's just going to freeze the room and it's going to have a tough time keeping that water warm without using the backup. So, we're going to have to look at our sexton's closet, which is where our water heater is, and make sure we have enough room in there. There is abilities to vent these to the outside if we absolutely have to. This one's not earthquake strapped, so that's a big code violation there. I don't see this pressure relief line being plumbed to the outside, so I see a bunch of code violations in that picture there. This is the electric range we were talking about. Right now we're on hold. No one's cooking up there. We're unsure of everything right now, including our finances. So we're holding off on this. This was kind of up there on the list, but this is what an electric range would look like, commercial range rather than a gas one. It turns out there is a St. Albans in Monroe, Georgia that beat us to it. These people were named one of 5 winners of the 2010 Energy Star Congregational Award. And I really want to reach out to these people and talk to them. It's so cool that there's some other St. Albans out there that was thinking about this 10 years ago. And I just stumbled upon this, and I want an Energy Star Congregational Award for our church. I think it's something we should go for. And it's something I think we could easily obtain with a little bit of work. There are some other resources out there. California Interfaith Power and Light. Check their website out. There's a lot of really cool stuff there. There's a Creation Justice Ministries as well. We use these people or these groups for resources. I want to build our relationship with them. They can learn from us. I'm sure we can learn a lot from them. That was a lot. That was a lot of talking by me. Like I said at the beginning, I want to make sure we have a little time for discussion and chat. So let's open it up a little bit, and if not, I'll just kind of keep talking about how we might go forward. So go ahead. Betsy, do you got a question? You're still muted. Oh, Betsy.
Can you hear me? At the end of the year, what was the electricity generated versus the electricity used?
So we our true up period is coming up, but right now we're going to be we're going to have a lot of credits. We probably generated twice as much as we used. A lot of that has to do with no one's at the church right now.
And how do you figure out how much of the carbon footprint we have reduced?
So we use Energy Star Portfolio Manager. You link your power bills, your water bills, your garbage bills, and they have metrics that spit out the data and allow us to measure it. And there's a lot of math and formulas that go into a lot of that, but it'll essentially tell us how many CO2, it can be measured in CO2 emissions a year. So there's a lot of data and data processing that goes in with Portfolio Manager.
So do we actually know how much we've reduced it?
It needs 1 year of data to start to get the baseline. So we're getting there, and then once we get a year of data, we'll start to see the graph kind of populate.
Okay. My next question is the pilot light on the gas stove turned off currently?
I don't know. We'll look into that. We'll talk about that. Let's maybe stick to questions to this presentation, and we'll pick that up at our Creation Care Ministry. So Betsy, you're asking, there was talk of us turning off the pilot light in the oven because no one's using the oven and it's just burning natural gas. But we'll look into that. And these are the things we're thinking about, little things even. Thank you, Betsy.
You're welcome.
Did you have another question, or was that it?
No, that's good. Let somebody else talk.
Thank you, Betsy. Diana, did you have a question? Donna, what did you think?
There we go. It was great. Thank you, Daniel. Excellent presentation. And kudos to you and the entire committee for all you've done and all you're planning to do.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I really have a great team. There's a lot of people that support me. Mother Sarah, Diana, Betsy, Bob, and Connie, Mother McCullery, Leslie, and of course Deacon Cindy too. So it's great. Thank you, Jonah, for recording today. Brad, did you have any questions? No? Well, thank you guys again. We're going to be meeting second Tuesday, and we do it by Zoom now. So everybody's welcome to kind of just call in now. And we are going to keep meeting at the church sometime in the future. I'd like to make sure we can continue to do some hands-on stuff. We can play around with some solar panels. We can look around and do more than just talk about it, and do some movements and actually go through the motions. So we're recording this presentation, everyone. Like we said, Jonah is going to try and get this loaded up. So if you're watching this as a recording, thank you for watching this. And please reach out to the Creation Care Ministry with any questions, or if anybody anybody wants to get involved and work with us. So again, thank you everybody, and we'll call it at that if anyone doesn't have any more questions. All right, thank you guys. Thank you, Jonah. We'll take care, okay?